Hello everyone, this is Helios Raven. I tell you how I do it, even if you don't care. And we're continuing our in-depth look into the forces of Battlefleet Gothic with the Space Marines. And the first on our list is the Space Marine Battle Barge. The Battle Barge is the Space Marine battleship, and in terms of stat-wise, it's actually fairly decent. It's got 12 hit points, it counts as a battleship, speed 20 centimeters, turns 45 degrees, 3 shields, armor 6, turrets 3, and a note here, it cannot use the Come to a New Heading special rule. All in all, not bad stats. 3 shields, armor 6, and 3 turrets, so it's got pretty good ordnance defense, as well as very tough to hit with weaponry due to its shields, and it's really hard to hit anyway because it's got the plus 6 armor on it. And weaponry-wise, as I mentioned in my introduction video, they're very big into close quarters combat in terms of effectiveness of weaponry, and on their port side, they've got a weapon battery system, 45 centimeter range, firepower 12, and they also have and on their starboard side, they've got another weapon battery system, 45 centimeters, strength 12. It's got a POW launch bay, which has Thunderhawks, which move at 20 centimeters, 3 squadrons. POW torpedoes, speed 30, servo strength 6, that fire in the front arc. And a dorsal bombardment cannon, range 30 centimeters, strength 8, front, left, right firing arc. Now, this is a really sick vehicle. Definitely with the Space Marine Army, you should have a battle barge in there because it is just like the cream of the crop when it comes to the Space Marine vehicles. It's very well armed, and when it gets to the broadside, it just rips apart everything in its path. Because especially with the bombardment cannon, and having strength 12 weapon batteries is also nothing to look down on. That's pretty nice. And the Thunderhawks, of course, which helps you get into close quarters, into boarding actions where the Space Marines can do some pretty heavy damage. And of course, torpedoes, which are great for taking down smaller vessels or for softening up vessels that you're moving to get in close quarters combat with. And so, all in all, great ship. I highly recommend it for any Space Marine force. And that was it for battleships that the Space Marines got. The next vessel on our list is their strike cruiser, the Space Marine Strike Cruiser. It's a light cruiser. It has the hit points of a light cruiser. It's only 6 hit points, speed 25, 90-degree turns, 1 shield, armor 6, turrets 2. So for a cruiser, it is fairly weak on the hit points and on the shielding, but it makes it up with the fact that it can turn 90 degrees, which is very nice. And it's got armor 6, so it is hard to hit. It's got on its port side a weapon battery system, 30 centimeter range, strength 4. On its starboard side, it's got a weapon battery system, 30 centimeters, strength 4. It's got a launch bay with Thunderhawks, 2 squadrons, and a POW bombardment cannon that's 30 centimeter range, strength 3. So armament-wise, it's kind of more of a light cruiser than it is a cruiser, but for some reason they decided to call it the Space Marines Cruiser, I guess mostly because of its armor that it has. Weaponry-wise, it's, like I said, great for close quarters combat. Definitely more in close quarters combat because at longer ranges it doesn't really get many dice, and so it's really tough for them to do the long range system. Again, though, in close quarters combat, this thing is a beast, especially once those bombardment cannons get to strike something, because they just rip apart everything that they get in contact with, especially since they only need force to hit and force to crit. And like I said, like that's like the bulk of the Space Marine army. Like, not really the bulk, but the major cruisers that they have. I would probably get a battle barge over a strike cruiser just because the battle barge is a little bit better armed, and for the only downside to the battle barge is it's more expensive. So if you're tight for points, then yeah, you have to go with a Space Marine strike cruiser. But if you can afford it, I'd take a battle barge over a strike cruiser and then load it up with escorts. And speaking of, let's move right on to the escorts. The Space Marines did have what were called Space Marine Raid Strike vessels. Basically what these were is they were the Sword-class frigate, the Firestorm-class frigate, and the Cobra-class destroyer from the Imperial Navy list. They functioned basically the same, except they followed the they contained the Space Marine special rules, which did increase their point list by 5 points due to the additional Space Marine rules. They basically function just like the same as always. The weaponment stats, armaments are all the same. They just get the Space Marine special rules that apply to them. And also, one note that they make, you can't cheat out by taking your Imperial Navy ships and throwing them in your Space Marine vessel and say, oh, they're the same. You have to paint them to be the same color scheme. You can't mix and match. Battlefleet Gothic was very no-no on that system, so they're basically saying if you want these cruisers in your Space Marine army, you have to paint them the same way. So that's basically it. If you have a player that's very leaning on this, fair deal, go right ahead. But if forever there's ever a campaign or tournament or anything, they're gonna follow that rule to the letter, most likely. And then actual Space Marine escorts that they got the Hunter class destroyer. The Hunter class destroyer has 1 hit point, speed 35 centimeters, 90-degree turns, 1 shield, armor 5, 1 turret. So it did lose a little bit in its armament, but it's still pretty decent. It's up there with speed, and it's got pretty decent armor as well, and it's armed with a torpedo servo in its front arc that's 30 centimeter range, strength 2, and a weapon battery system in its front left and right arc that's range 30 centimeters, firepower 1. So this thing is very weak when it comes to the weapon battery system, but again, these are more escorts are designed to be put into little packs, so to up their weapon battery weapon systems a little bit. In terms of armament-wise, if you were going for more of if you wanted a heavy ordnance control payload, then you would if you want more ordnance payload, you would definitely want to go with the Hunter class ship over the other ones. But compared to the other 3, I'm not a big fan of it. Then there is the Gladius class frigate. The Gladius class frigate has the same stats as the Hunter class destroyer, except it's only 30 speed, and it has 2 turrets, which is really nice, and it's got a weapon battery system with 30 centimeters, strength 4, in its front left and right arc. So it loses the torpedo servo, loses 5 centimeter speed, but gains an extra turret and more weapon battery firepower, which is really nice. And point-wise, it's only 5 points more, so it's not really, you're not really sacrificing much, and you're gaining a lot for your point increase. You're gaining a lot without spending a lot of points. And the last escort ship that they got was the Nova class frigate. This has a speed of this basically has the same stats as the Hunter class destroyer, but it traded off the torpedo servo for a weapon battery that fires in its front left and right arc, same range 30 centimeters, but it's firepower 2, and it traded off the torpedoes for a lance with a range 30 centimeters, firepower 1, front left right arc. So if you wanted some long range combat in your army, then you would want to go with the Nova class frigates. Between the 3 there, let's see, I'd probably think that the Gladius and the Gladius is probably the best escort out of all of them, and then probably taking a bunch of Cobra class or Firestorm frigates from the Imperial Navy Army. I forget which ones have the ordnance payloads, but those would be a lot better because I think they're a little bit better than the Hunter class destroyer in terms of stats and weaponry. And in terms of long range, the Nova class is decent because it has that 1 lance shot, but out between the 3, I think the one that's really worth its point setup is the Gladius class, because the Nova class frigate is 5 points more than the Gladius class, and I don't think you're really getting much with that. I think you get a lot more with the Gladius vessel, so between the 3 of them, the Gladius class frigate I think was the best escort that they got. And you already know my opinion on the 3 Imperial Navy vessels, as I mentioned in the Imperial Navy in-depth. Like I said, the strike cruiser is it's not the best, but it's really all you got. The battle barge is by far the better vehicle between the 2, and, well, ship, sorry. And that's basically all I can say about them, so until next time, this is Helios Raven, signing off.